JRPGs have been some of my favorite games for basically my entire life, and every so often, one comes along that just feels so complete. You finish it and think, yeah, that was a 10 out of 10. Not because it's flawless necessarily, but because everything just works. The story, the combat, the pacing, the characters. I mean, everything just clicks, and I love it when that happens. So today, I wanted to highlight 10 JRPGs that I think are a 10 out of 10. Some are recent, some are classics, but they all left a strong impression and did something that really stuck with me long after I finished them. This isn't a ranking or a best of all time list, just 10 games that I think really show the genre at its best. If you like this kind of content, want to see more JRPG retrospectives, reviews, recommendations, or lists like this, be sure to subscribe. And with all that said, let's jump right into it. Metaphor Refantasio is the kind of genre shift that shouldn't work on paper, but it definitely does. It takes Atlus's now familiar formula from the Persona series and transplants it into a dark, high fantasy world where political ambition is the main focus. But what makes it a 10 out of 10 isn't that it's just a Persona in a medieval setting, it's how it reinvents those mechanics in a way that feels fresh, ambitious, and more thematically complex than anything Atlus has ever done before. Combat here blends traditional turn-based action with real-time enemy detection and positional strategy. It's faster paced than Persona, but still offers that same satisfying depth once you dig into the archetype system. The game's spin on classes, basically. Archetypes allow for a flexible party composition that feels genuinely reactive to both the story and your choices. You're not just leveling up, you're shaping roles and adapting strategies across increasingly complex dungeons and field encounters. Where Metaphor really earns its spot on this list, though, is in how it handles choice and leadership. The game's story revolves around your role as a candidate in a kingdom whose ruler is chosen not by bloodline, but by popularity and merit. That social pressure seeps into everything in this game. Your interactions with party members, your public perception, and even how cities react to your presence evolve depending on your decisions. It's a subtle shift from Persona's personal growth to societal change, and this definitely hits for me. Every major party member embodies a different worldview, and your bond with them doesn't just unlock battle perks, but forces you to confront different philosophies about fear and loyalty and ambition. Visually, this game is gorgeous. The world design leans hard into painterly fantasy, castles in the clouds, eerie forests, stained glass cities, but it never feels way overdone. It's fictional but grounded, and the soundtrack may be one of the genre's best. If Persona was about finding yourself in the modern world, Metaphor Refantasio is about deciding what kind of world you want to build and whether you're willing to carry that weight. It's bold, it's polished, and unafraid to ask the big questions. It's an easy 10 out of 10 in my book. There's a reason Chrono Trigger is still talked about nearly 30 years later. It's not just a classic in the historical sense, it's a game that still holds up mechanically and emotionally today. You could hand it to someone who's never played a JRPG before, and they probably just have an amazing time. It's really that great. Right off the bat, it does something modern games still struggle with. No random encounters, no bloated tutorials, no grinding unless you really want to. It respects your time while offering enough depth to keep you engaged. The tech combo system makes learning the combat feel really important, and because you can see enemies on the map, you're encouraged to experiment with different team setups instead of just mashing through fights. The structure here is also really great. The time travel gimmick could have been messy and honestly a disaster, but it ends up serving as both narrative and mechanical innovation. You visit the same locations across different eras and watch how decisions ripple forward or backward. And when you realize just how many endings are possible based on your choices, it's wild how replayable this game is for something that's only around 20 hours long. But what really elevates Chrono Trigger for me is its tone. It's adventurous, it's hopeful, sometimes tragic, but never bogged down by, unnecessary drama. In a way, Chrono Trigger is lightning in a bottle, a perfectly paced, emotionally resonant, mechanically clean game that feels completely timeless. Not because of nostalgia, but because it's just that well made. Persona 5 Royal has kind of become the gold standard for modern JRPG polish. It's the kind of game that takes 100 hours and somehow makes them feel justified. The moment to moment flow of juggling school life, infiltrating palaces, building relationships, it's all so tight and satisfying that the days almost play like levels. And while the original version was already great, Royal smooths out the pacing, adds depth to the characters, and delivers a third act that reframes the game's entire theme. Mechanically, the combat is fast and flexible. The baton pass system rewards smart play, and once you get into the persona fusion, it becomes this weirdly addictive puzzle of optimizing builds. It's not just about raw stats either. Every persona feels like a personality, an extension of the main character's identity, and that theme ties beautifully into the core story. What really makes Persona 5 Royal a 10 out of 10 for me, though, is how it blends form and function. The visual design isn't just flashy, it tells you who these characters are. The music isn't just catchy, it reflects their tone and setting. Every screen transition, every battle intro, every calendar day has style. But more importantly, it has meaning. It's a rare case where aesthetics enhance the overall message. Narratively, the way it takes each palace and uses it to explore systemic abuse, whether it's in schools, families, or corporations, or even politics, is very bold. The game asks you to confront the idea of growth within a corrupt world, and then gives you the tools to push back on it. And by the time the third semester rolls around, it introduces the idea that even an ideal world can be very dangerous, which adds this deeper layer to the game's already strong philosophical message. Is it long? Yes. Maybe a little too long for some people, but it's also one of the most rewarding, well realized JRPGs ever made. A game that balances being accessible and stylish without sacrificing its depth. It earns its runtime and then some, in my opinion. Final Fantasy VI is, in many ways, the blueprint for emotional storytelling in JRPGs. Before voice acting, full 3D cutscenes, and cinematic flair, Square managed to tell a sprawling, deeply human story with 16-bit sprites, and somehow it still hits harder than most titles today. Final Fantasy VI starts off strong, exploring the depth of each of the characters. The second half of the game could have just been a revenge tour, but instead turns into something more interesting. You're gathering your party not just to defeat evil, but to help each character flesh out their background and story. Gameplay wise, it's a classic turn based Final Fantasy with a few cool twists. Each character has a unique command ability, and they all feel distinct. It makes switching between party members feel fun rather than a chore because everyone plays differently. The Magicite system adds another layer, letting you assign espers to teach spells and stat boosts. It's simple but flexible, and it encourages experimentation without being too overwhelming. The music deserves its own spotlight. It truly is one of my favorite soundtracks in the series. The opera scene is legendary for a reason, and it's not just because of the spectacle. It's because it shows what JRPGs could be even in the early days: emotional, theatrical, and most importantly, incredibly authentic. More than any other game in the series, Final Fantasy VI walks the line between epic and personal. It doesn't just throw you into a world saving plot like a bunch of other games do, it invites you to rebuild a broken world piece by piece. This is a truly special game and is a must play for anyone that loves JRPGs. Now, Nier Automata isn't your typical JRPG, and that's exactly what makes it special. It plays like an action game and feels like a visual novel, but somehow it never loses the emotional thread that keeps the story going. It's a rare game where everything from combat, story, music, structure, it all feeds into a central theme, and that theme is, what does it mean to be human when you aren't one? You start as 2B, a stoic android tasked with wiping out machines on a ruined Earth, but by the time you've played through Route C, that basic premise has unraveled into something way messier and way deeper. Each route recontextualizes what you know, shifting perspectives in ways that feel meaningful and not at all gimmicky. Route B isn't just a retread, it's an emotional payoff, and Route C is a straight up gut punch. If you played this game, you know what I'm talking about. All the variations of the playthroughs make you feel something different, and I've never experienced anything like this. Combat is sleek thanks to Platinum Games, but layered with deep chip-based loadouts that give it an almost JRPG style customization. Want to build a glass cannon? You can go for it. Want to use auto heals and time dodges? The system lets you fine-tune your android brain like a loadout menu. It's weird and cool in all the right ways. The story is quietly devastating. You meet machines that mimic human behavior, form religions, fall in love, raise children. And you're forced to ask questions like, are they pretending or are they evolving? The game doesn't answer this for you, and the ambiguity is part of its magic. The world design is minimalist, but it works. You've got abandoned amusement parks, ruined cities, crumbling castles, all set a score that's genuinely one of the best in games. Most games give you one story. This game gives you layers. It invites you to play through the same events multiple times, not because it has nothing new to show, but because you didn't understand the truth the first time, or the second, and maybe not even the third. It's haunting, it's bold, and occasionally very frustrating, but in a way that feels deliberate. Nier Automata isn't trying to be liked by everyone, it's trying to be remembered, and to me, I think it succeeds at that immensely. Trails in the Sky's second chapter is what happens when you let a story breathe. This isn't a 10 out of 10 because of flashy set pieces or bombastic combat. It's a 10 because it's deeply invested in its world and characters. If you're patient, the emotional payoff is massive. The story picks up immediately after first chapter. That's all I'll say here to avoid any spoilers. What's so impressive is how personal everything feels. This isn't a world-ending crisis, at least not at first. It's about nations on the brink, backroom political deals, and deeply personal betrayals. And because the world building is so robust, it feels huge even when the stakes are very localized. Combat uses a grid-based system that blends traditional turn-based mechanics with positioning and area effects. It rewards preparation, crafting quartz builds, managing CP, exploiting status effects. Boss fights can be surprisingly tough, but never feel unfair. When you win, it definitely feels earned. But the real draw here is the writing. Every NPC has unique dialogue that changes throughout the story. Side quests often connect back to the main narrative or reveal details about the setting. The game doesn't tell you how rich the world is, it just really lets you live in it. It's also a game that understands tone. It can be funny, it can be warm, or it can even be tense, and it knows when to shift gears. Soundtrack complements all of that beautifully, from light town themes to the heavier orchestral boss tracks. Trails SC is slow. There's no question about it. But that slowness is part of the rhythm. It's about details, conversations, and watching people change over time. If you buy in, you'll come out on the other side deeply attached to a world that feels more lived in than most open world games could ever dream of being. It's a hidden gem for many, but once you're in, you're definitely in. Unicorn Overlord is a tactical RPG that feels like it was made by people who love the genre, but also aren't afraid to challenge it a little. This isn't just Vanillaware doing Fire Emblem things, it's a full-on reinvention of the strategy RPG genre built to be flexible, open-ended, and intensely satisfying. At first glance, it's gorgeous, no surprise there. Vanillaware's hand-drawn art has always been top tier in my opinion, but this might be their best work yet. The overworld map looks like a living medieval tapestry, and every unit animation pops with detail. It's the kind of game where even walking around is just really fun to look at. But once you dig in, the systems are where this game really shines. Battles happen in real time on the world map, but when units clash, they enter an auto battle phase where your pre-configured tactics take over. That sounds very passive, but the prep is where the real strategy lives. You're building squads for up to 5 characters, assigning formations, setting conditional abilities. Say, for example, if enemy HP is below 50%, use this skill, and you're even tuning them for synergy. It's more deck building than micromanaging, and it opens up a ridiculous amount of creative possibilities. The best part? It respects your time. You can grind if you want, but the game's generous with gold, XP, and progression paths. Side missions are meaningful, and exploration is encouraged through optional recruits and hidden items across a sprawling map that lets you go almost anywhere right from the start. It's rare to see a strategy RPG that leans this hard into player freedom. The story is straightforward but solid. A fallen prince rallies a rebellion against an empire, but what keeps it interesting is the scope of the cast of characters. Each recruit has a little backstory, unique dialogue, and often connections to other characters. So you start building your own mini narratives through how you compose your units. And let's talk about the presentation here. The menus are incredibly clean, and there's a calm confidence to the entire experience. It just executes every element so incredibly well. It's one of the most addicting one more battle games I've ever played. If you like tactical RPGs, this one's a no-brainer. If you don't like tactical RPGs, Unicorn Overlord might actually be the one to win you over. Dragon Quest XI doesn't reinvent anything, and that's its superpower. Honestly, in an era where so many RPGs are chasing the trendiness, this one feels like a warm, familiar hug. It's traditional, but not in a boring way. It's old school with modern polish, and it's proud of what it is. From the moment you step into the world, it's clear how much care went into it. Everything from the towns, the monsters, the NPC dialogue just oozes charm. The color palette is vibrant, the environments are big and inviting without being overwhelming, and there's a real sense of adventure here. It makes walking into a new town exciting, which is something I feel a lot of modern RPGs forget how to do. The turn-based combat is simple on the surface, but gets deeper the more you engage with it. Each character fills a clear role, from tanks to healers, but the game gives you enough tools through the skill tree system and equipment to tweak them to your style. And it's satisfying in that classic JRPG way. Getting a new sword, unlocking a flashy new spell, watching your team land a perfect combo. What really pushes Dragon Quest XI to a 10 out of 10 has to be the overall way that it's structured. The game lulls you into thinking it's a straightforward good versus evil story, and then it flips. There's genuine emotional breakthroughs here that are a lot bigger and flashier than most other games. The Definitive Edition improves on the original in just about every way. Faster battle speed, new side quests, orchestral soundtrack, and the ability to play the entire game in 2D, which is such a cool bonus for fans of the older games like myself. It even adds character-focused side stories that flesh out the party in meaningful ways. The game also never forgets to be fun. There's an amusement park, a dude named Vince who's basically a pro wrestler, and a surprisingly touching subplot about a mermaid. It knows when to be silly and when to hit you with a gut punch. For some people, traditional is a turnoff, but Dragon Quest XI proves that if you do something really, really well, you don't need to break the mold, you just need to own it. This game absolutely does. Final Fantasy X is a game that understands how to create an experience. Not just a story, not just a set of mechanics, but a complete, emotionally driven journey that still resonates 2 decades later. It's beautiful, tragic, awkward, and iconic, and still one of the most impactful JRPGs I've ever played. You start with Titus, a blitzball player that literally ripped out of his world and thrown into another. On paper, he's goofy. Kind of a whiny protagonist, but that's the point. You grow with him. You watch him shift from confused outsider to someone who deeply understands the weight of what's happening around him. The battle system is near perfect. The conditional turn-based battle system lets you see the turn order and manipulate it with speed-based moves. Every character has a specific combat role, and switching them mid-battle encourages smart play and experimentation. Sphere Grid is still one of my favorite progression systems in all of video games, and letting you chart your own path for each party member while still maintaining its structure is so well executed. Thematically, this game hits hard. It's about cycles, violence, sacrifice, and loss. It's about choosing your own path even when fate says otherwise. The visuals still hold up really well, especially in the remastered versions. Every location feels handcrafted and important. I love the bright and vibrant colors, and I think it's something that's been missing from mainline Final Fantasy for so long now. The soundtrack is also incredible. In general, it is emotional, ambient, and beautifully matched to every scene and situation in the game. This is a game that stays with you long after you finish it, one that makes you feel like you've been somewhere, not just finished a game. Final Fantasy X is not only one of the best Final Fantasy games, but one of the best games ever made. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the kind of game that reminds you why JRPGs are so special. It's massive in scale, loaded with emotional nuance, and constantly pushing both narrative and mechanical complexity forward. It's a high watermark not just for Xenoblade series, but for modern JRPGs in general. At its core, this is a game about time, about fighting for a future in a world where people are born to die after 10 years of combat. Noah, Mio, the rest of the party start as enemies literally raised to kill each other in an endless war, but when they're forced to work together, the story takes off in a big way. It's about learning to live instead of just surviving. The writing here is some of the strongest in any Monolith Soft game. Every main character has a defined arc with real emotional payoff. It all ties back to the game's core question: what would you do with the limited time you have? Combat is deep but approachable. You've got MMO style positioning, class swapping, chain attacks, and the Ouroboros transformation system, where characters literally fuse into massive beings with powerful custom movesets. It's complex for sure, but the game introduces systems gradually, letting you grow into them without completely overwhelming you. Just like with any Xenoblade game, exploration is top tier. The environments are stunning and incredibly massive, from vertical to full on hidden routes and side quests that actually matter. Colonies you visit have full economies, storylines, cast members that evolve over time. It's not just go here, kill this, it's go there and just change people's lives. Thematically, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is very mature. It doesn't shy away from pain, but it doesn't wallow in it either. It's a deep and well drawn out story with very meaningful impact. It's not just the best Xenoblade game in my opinion, it's one of the most emotionally complete JRPGs I've played. Ambitious and personal and perfectly paced, a masterpiece in my book. Anyway, that's it for me in this one. So these are my top 10 JRPGs that are a 10 out of 10 to me. Whether they're newer entries or beloved classics, each one left something behind that I still think about long after the credits roll. If there's a game you'd consider a 10 out of 10, definitely drop it in the comments below. I always love seeing what other people consider amazing JRPG experiences. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this one, feel free to like, subscribe, stick around for more deep dives into all things JRPGs. And until next time, I'm out.